settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devan, and I know we've had a lot of guests on here that drop in knowledge, and it always is so much more fun when I get to introduce you guys to a friend. And today we have the honor of having Mills Bender on. You may know her as Mills Knows Bills, but she is a fractional CFO. She also, has a YouTube and has an Instagram and has a podcast that goes more in depth, that helps everyone and anyone really know about and really master their own finances. So with further ado, Mills, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. That's got to be the most fun intro I've ever had with a podcast. The music, the branding, even just being able to talk with you. I'm really excited to kind of just chit chat this morning. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. Well, let's dive into your story a little bit before we start diving into, how to really set people up or set yourself up for this last quarter and then going into the new year. But how did it all start for you, right? So people can get a little background on you. How did Mills Knows Bills start?
Yeah, it kind of found me. So about 10 years ago, I was just starting my college career and woke up one day to $1.50 in my checking account. I didn't have any savings, didn't have a credit card, was so financially illiterate. I didn't even know how to apply for a credit card. So it was just this moment where I realized, wow, I'm financially illiterate. Let's figure something out about this. And so at that point in time, the overwhelm kind of got to me. And so I kind of swept everything under the rug for about maybe 6 months until I decided to study finance. I wasn't really sure what I wanted as a career, but I knew money was going to have a part of it. So why not study it? It was through that experience, through a variety of different internships, that I realized I fell in love with the idea of money management and helping others feel empowered through their own finances as well. And then a few years later, I started MKB as a YouTube channel, was still working full-time, but when COVID happened, lost that full-time job. And so I was kind of shoved through this door of entrepreneurship about 5 years ago. So it started 10 years ago, but it's been a long journey getting to where I am now.
No, that's so awesome. And it's crazy. So first question I want to ask is, when you went to college, right, was your original major finance, or what was your original major?
No, it was business management, which was my nice way of saying undecided. I didn't want to be an undecided major, but I knew I was going to do something in business. Between you and I guess everybody listening / watching this, I didn't think I was smart enough to pursue a degree in finance at the point. So it wasn't until I decided to just do it anyway that I realized I was actually good at it.
No, that's funny because I felt like that was going to be a similar answer to what I was thinking. And the reason I say that is because I did the same exact thing. Yeah. I was a business management major. And then all of a sudden, I was working as a personal trainer. And at the time, it was like my quote unquote college job. And then I learned that there's a whole degree in kinesiology about just the study of human movement. I was like, wait, I could learn more about that. I'll switch and like business management was, that was just my trying to figure it out. So that's funny. Exactly. So it's funny, like, because sometimes you don't know where you're going to go and what your path is going to lead, but you have to keep your eyes open and your mind open. So for you, like, you all of a sudden hit this rough phase, right? And you're like, wow. And you start really diving into how to fix it. And that opened up a whole nother door and opened a whole nother side of you that you're like, I can actually help other people do this too. So I think that's so awesome. And it's actually really inspiring that, if you don't know where you're going in life right now, it's okay. Sometimes it'll present itself to you. Right?
Will. Yeah. I was actually talking with, I have a student from UCF who's been shadowing me, and she asked me a really great question this morning of, making decisions and moving forward. And my response was along the lines of, you don't have to know every single step. You just need to make a decision based off of that long-term vision and what's going to get you to the next step, right? You just need to know the following one. And so as an entrepreneur, I feel like I would have learned that a little sooner in life, but it's okay.
No, I mean, that's something you learn as you go, but you got to be willing to take that next step, right? That's the hardest thing. And people try to analyze it and think about every what if and what if it doesn't work out. And it's like, well, what if it ends up being the best thing that's ever happened to you?
What if it does work out?
You know, you just
Yeah.
got to take that step. And it's funny because like I usually reference, we both have, kids. As an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, I know you can, relate to this, but someone was talking to me the other day and I was like, it's like the movie Frozen, right? Literally Elsa at one point was, is like, all you have to do is take your next step,
Yeah.
and I was like, and I literally gave that whole perfect quote and they're like, wait, do you have a little kid? I was like, oh yeah, I have a daughter.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, but so how I want to dive into that a little bit as well, though, before we really dive into like the meat
Mhm.
of everything. Being an entrepreneur is already tough,
Yeah.
and adding, being a spouse, let alone being a parent, makes it even tougher in some days.
Mhm.
How has your family, dynamic worked around, being a business owner?
Mm. Well, honestly, that was one of the reasons why I decided to really double down on entrepreneurship when that was kind of my forced option. I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I also wanted to work. I get a lot of joy out of helping others. I like to, use my brain in that capacity while also nurturing two little ones. And so entrepreneurship was really the avenue where I got to do the best of both worlds. And so for me, I've established very strict boundaries in my schedule where I work no more than 25 hours a week. And I'm very strategic on those hours. I will work very early in the morning when my kids are still sleeping. And then during the hours that they are awake, I have a nanny to help with fostering that stay at home experience. Beyond that, I'm mom and wife. Once 3 or 4 o'clock hits during the day, nope, that work can wait for the next day, right? And so it's about finding that balance, but understanding that as strict as you want to be, there's going to be extenuating circumstances. Maybe one of my kids gets sick, or maybe I have a really important prospecting call. And so it's about having that balance, but making sure that I live within the 80-20, 80% being sticking to the schedule and routine as much as I possibly can.
No, that's awesome. And I want to, go in on the word that you just mentioned because it's a word that people take out of context, right? And I know you don't take it the way that, is like that, right? So the word balance that you said twice, what does balance mean to you?
There is no such thing as work-life balance, in my opinion. They feed into each other. And so I am always mom, but I'm also always entrepreneur. And it's just a matter of what am I focusing on right now? When I knew I wanted to become a mom, I knew I wanted to build a business that would give me energy rather than take my energy because it's always on my mind. It really is. And so same thing with my kids. Even as I'm talking to you, I hear my son, playing 2 rooms over, right? And I'm thinking about the activities that I get to have with him. And so the balance does not mean, it's cut and dry. It's a matter of making sure that all areas of your life feed into each other and help you move forward into the life that you want.
No, that's awesome because I think so many people think of balance almost like a seesaw, like everything has to be leveled, right?
No.
And like my balance and even your balance, right? As us two, we're completely different in our balance, right?
Mhm.
We have our lives are different, our family dynamics are different, like they're the
Yeah.
same but different. But you have to find what your balance is, right? If it's 80-20, if it's 60-40, whatever the case may be, you got to find your own balance within yourself and within what works for you. Because if you're trying to do everything equal, nothing, everyone's going to get like the short end of every situation,
Right.
right? So you got to figure out what works for you and then really explore into that. Now, I want to, again, this question is going to go off topic, and because you're the only person that I've seen do this, and actually even more so than I do it. And so I want to, get your take on it.
What?
For me, I told my wife and I've told, her sisters and everything that I don't want my daughter's name or anything like that on social media. Like they can post pictures of her, but
Mhm.
don't ever put her name. right? And so I've seen you post pictures of your kids, but their faces are always covered, names are never mentioned. And so I wanted to, ask you a little bit about that, because I thought that, was really interesting. A lot of people don't really consider that when they're, posting about their kids.
When my son was first born, I did not hide his face as much. I think it was probably once he was around 4 months that I started doing that. And I made that change because I realized that I was starting to get into a position of influence online. And for a lot of people online, they feel like they know me when in reality, I don't know them. And so they started acting as though they knew my kid too. And that was weird because they're not your child. Do not provide unsolicited advice. Do not ask questions that are, frankly, incredibly personal, And so it was really my approach of, I need to protect both of my children at this point. I'll call them little man or little miss, and, I'll put a blue heart over his face, pink heart over hers. But, it's a very interesting dynamic when I'm trying to approach to a higher level of influence online while also maintaining some level of privacy. For me, I've chosen to make parts of my life public. My kids don't have a say in that. My husband doesn't really have a say in that. And so I'm also, you might not notice this, but I'm also very strategic as to what information I share about my marriage online too, and things with him. So every time I post something that involves him, I always ask for his permission behind the scenes, simply because it's a required part for my business, but it doesn't mean that I need to make it required for their parts too.
No, and I have noticed it, and it's funny because my wife and me have like a similar, you know, working relationship on that aspect. Like before she tags me or does anything, she'll ask, because my business and everything is so revolved around fitness and health. So like when we were out at the wedding, like, did I have drinks? Yes. Do I post that on any social media? No. And if you tag me in it, I will not repost it. Right. And it's not that I tell people like I don't drink. I never say that. But at the same time, it's just one of those things I decide not to show people, right? If you want to see me drinking, like you have to be close with me, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. But let's dive in a little bit to like, mastering your money, right? Wrapping up the year, people wait until the last minute to try to, save themselves. And, we're already here. So it's not much you can do right now in terms of fixing that problem. We can, we can do some things, but let's start setting you up for 2025 as well. What would be the first piece of advice if someone comes to you and is like, I don't know what to do, everything is in chaos, where do I start?
Well, let's operate under the assumption that this person has up-to-date bookkeeping and as accurate bookkeeping as possible. Okay. So if that is accurate, then the first thing I would suggest is analyze your profit and loss on a month-over-month basis. So in QuickBooks and other bookkeeping platforms, you can pull a profit and loss where it shows January, February, March, April, right? Every single month for the year. As a business owner, it's critical for you to analyze your year on a month-over-month review, because it'll tell you a few different things. It'll tell you when your peak seasons are versus your slow seasons. It'll tell you where most of your revenue is coming from. If it's coming from 1 or 2 clients versus 200 clients. It'll let you know when your annual insurance renewals are due, right? And so if you're able to analyze the financials, not only are you able to make financially based decisions off of that information, you're able to make operational decisions as well. When to make a new hire, when to spend time training, when to spend time investing into that new software program, right? Whatever it may be. But if you're only looking at it for a year, it's only giving you a portion of the picture.
No, I think that is so true. And believe me, in the beginning, when I first launched my business, I could speak from experience, I did everything like on a Google Excel, and I was just like tallying up everything. And it was in chaos. Like I was kind of just taking track, but not knowing where to go. And then it was until like we got a bookkeeper and started getting P&Ls and really trying to understand a little bit more, that things just started clicking. You knew when to take a next step and try another revenue stream. And you're like, if it doesn't work, this is at least our budget for it, right?
Exactly.
So let's take that next step, right? And let's say someone doesn't or does have bookkeeping stuff for their business.
Mhm.
Do you recommend that that individual have a system for themselves personally as well?
For personal finances?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. You, as a business owner, your personal finances are tied directly to your business. And so you don't know what your business needs to do in terms of performance unless you know what your personal finances need as well. I always encourage my clients to start with their personal finances, work backwards to see how much they need the business to pay them, and then embed that in the business plan as well. But if you don't have clarity in one area of your finances, you're not going to have clarity at all because they feed so much into each other.
Yeah, there's been a few people that I have spoken to over the years, and it's like their business is on point. They have bookkeeping, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, so what are you using for yourself? And they're like, what do you mean?
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
that
was like,
means they're using
I
their
was,
business as their personal piggy bank. Like that's
yeah, that or you're just throwing, shots in the dark with with what you got going on.
yep.
So I think that's a huge piece that people realize is like you can't give 100% of your effort to the business and not give that same effort to your household,
Yeah.
because my wife laughs because I say everything in life is a business, right?
But
A household, the household is a business. And then my wife's like, this is literally actually this weekend, she was like, explain it. And I was like, okay, like you have income, I have income, right? That's going to be
revenue.
our revenue. Okay.
Mhm,
I was like, we have expenses, right? With payments and so all expenses.
mhm.
What is left over in a month is our given profit, right? And going that whole route. And she's like, I never really thought about it that way. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying, with I won't go too much into it, but the elections and stuff, I was like, one of the requirements for all future elections, I think that how a president needs to be at least 35, right? Which is
Yeah.
a random requirement for me.
Yeah.
I think that they need to have a degree or experience in finance, in economics, or in
Yeah.
so many, you know, presidents or senators are just lifelong politicians, where I think there needs to be an understanding that yes, the laws are important, but also the country is a business. And if you
Mhm.
don't think of it that way, then you're already setting us back,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So and then
You're not wrong.
so I told her that, and then she was like, "It's weird. I never thought about it that way. It makes sense." And I was like, yeah, it just is. I don't know what to say."
Remember
but
a professor I had about maybe 7 or 8 years ago said the average American consumer will pass at least $1 million through their life, right? Like when they start working to when they die, over $1 million. And this was years ago. So I'm sure that number has increased due to inflation and everything. But if you think about it, that's a 7-figure business that you just get to manage.
no, definitely. And you don't think about it, but you have to think about, okay, you make, let's say, 100 grand a year, right?
Mhm.
In 10 years, if you didn't spend a single dollar, theoretically, like that's $1 million, right?
Mhm.
But now you are spending money and you feel like you're always broke. It's like, well, how much is eating out? How much is, and I do the same conversation with people in fitness. It's like, personal training might be expensive, or, getting a gym membership might be expensive, but really you were just talking about, you had, in and out with your kids yesterday. That was literally your entire month membership, right? Or that was one session of
Yep.
personal training, right? And if you take things and you start to like, okay, I'm not going to do this because I want to do this, and you think about your life in that way, everything starts to line up and make more sense,
Yeah.
right? But it all starts from knowing that your numbers, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's dive in a little bit. Like, so now someone has their bookkeeping done, right?
Yeah.
And they know that they look at their profit and loss statements and stuff. What would be someone's next idea? Like, let's say if they want to scale their business or they want to open up a new revenue stream, what are they looking at?
Well, once you're done analyzing your profit and loss, you need to establish your budget for the year. And I'm not talking about an arbitrary one and done budget. I'm talking about what do you want to spend in January, February, March, like every single month you should have a plan and a projection. I think where a lot of business owners fall short is they're only looking at either operational goals or financial goals. They don't see how they overlap. One of my favorite things to do, not just personally, but with my clients, is identifying the slow season in business. So, for example, for me, that's summer. No one wants to hire a CFO in summer. Okay. I hired all of my new hires for this year in summer because I knew I was going to have a slowdown in revenue, which meant I would have the time to dedicate towards training them. How did I financially afford to do that? 3 months prior, I started setting aside the money that I would need, saved that up for those new hires. So looking at my financials let me know when I needed to increase cash reserves, when I could pull the trigger on hiring new people, but looking at the slow season operationally, let me know when I could build up the infrastructure to withstand the revenue boom that would come after that. And so you need to establish a budget, but you also need to ask yourself the common sense questions like, when does it make sense to make the new hire? When does it make sense to implement the new software? How can I make sure I can not just afford it for that first month, but sustainably for at least 3 months? Do I need to boost my emergency fund? How much do I need to contribute of my budget those previous months to my emergency fund? So it's a lot of this give and take. It's an art, not a science, and it really comes from asking those probing questions of yourself and then making sure that you have the game plan that's written down in advance.
And when you say emergency fund, what is your recommended for someone, both on a personal level and on a professional level in their business with the amount or percent that they should have in emergency fund?
So on the personal side, look at your mandatory expenses. Those are the things that, you're going to have to pay if what hits the fan. We're not talking about Netflix or Spotify. You're going to get rid of those things if you lose out on income, right? Your mortgage, your insurance, your car payment, right? Those are your mandatories. Look at your mandatory expenses, have at least 3 months of that set aside, at least. On the business side, look at your average operating expenses. You should have at least 3 months of your OpEx set aside.
Okay, so three months is a fair number, and that's what we have actually, and that's something that I was like, 3 months is more than enough time to figure out how to fix, what's going wrong.
That's exactly my point. That's exactly
Right.
my point. If you think it's going to take you 90 days to pivot, give yourself 90 days. If you're in a very interesting industry and you think it's going to take you 120 days to pivot, do 4 months. But at least 3 months should be set aside.
No, that's awesome. Now let's dive into going into when you're saying budgeting, right? And because believe me, I use QuickBooks and it's not, unless you're in finance and stuff, like there's still things I'm Googling. Okay, well, this is what I'm trying to categorize. What the heck? Where is it? Right.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at QuickBooks or when you're looking at personal finances, you're talking about forecasting, right? Or is that something that you're, different? Because the thing that I was always, when I'm looking at forecasting, it's like, hypothetically, this is what should be coming in, right? And now, is that what you're creating your budgets off of, is your forecast, right?
Yes. So I will have I call it my template budget, where I will have all of the expenses that I know I'm going to have for next year. But some line items might have 0 until Q3.
Okay.
When I know I want to implement that. And so it will be based off of expected revenue, but that's also why it's a budget and why you have the operational goals tied to those financial goals. So if revenue gets pushed out, then you get to move the operational goals back by however many months it is until you hit that revenue marker. So you can use QuickBooks, you can use Excel, you can use pen and paper to get started. But the idea is to intentionally write it down first and then weekly go back and look at those numbers and categorize it against those budget items.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where people get wrapped up, is like they set a goal, right? And it's like, whether they hit it or not, they just take the leap. And it's like, no, you can't do it that way. Like you have to, like, you set a goal of X, amount of dollars to do this thing. Just because you didn't hit it now, you're not going to do it with what you have. You have to push it back. You have to adjust your timeline.
Mhm.
An interesting thing that you said, right, was that there's slow months and there's busy months. Like right now, my gym is in a slow month, right?
Mhm.
This is normal for all gyms essentially is the end of the year. Now, I always thought of it in the same way you did. Like this is when we hire more people. This is when we do our training because we have the time to really dive in on our people.
Yeah.
But I've also heard that people will go the opposite and really dive into the marketing side and really dive into to try to make their slow month not a slow month, right? How do you feel about that?
Um, I agree with half of that. So the way that I look at doubling down on marketing during slow months is that your competitor didn't financially forecast. They didn't plan for this. So chances are in your slow months is going to be the perfect time for you to swoop up really great talent. When your competitor is not marketing, you are, which then means when the boom comes back up, you're top of mind more often than your competitor is. So I don't necessarily agree with the fact that marketing in your slow seasons will really move the needle forward during your slow seasons, but I do think it'll certainly move the needle forward more during the uptick.
Okay, actually, I never really thought about it like that because in the beginning we would market during the slow seasons, and then since there wasn't really a turnaround or anything because it's still a slow season, it's like okay, let's just take that off the radar right now. Let's focus on internal and then go back to it. But it's now thinking of it, you're almost planting the seed
Yeah.
so that you can be top of mind and people are already like on January 1st, I'm going to them or,
Yeah.
in that something of that nature. So that actually really is smart. Well, we're going to get back on that today, you know? No, see, that's awesome. Now with if you don't mind, like with your husband and stuff, is he an entrepreneur? If you don't, it's
No, he's not. He works for a large consulting firm, but we do actually have plans to bring him over to MKB full time within, per my forecast, within a year.
No, that's awesome. And I think that that's so cool. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit, if you don't mind, because when we did talk in person, I thought that was so awesome. I mean, my not official forecast like yours, my
Yeah.
unofficial forecast, like I've told my wife and, my business partner has told his wife, like our goal is to build the franchise side out and eventually have them come and play an internal role as well. So I
Mhm.
thought that was so cool. But your husband's, role is even cooler because he's in a tech side and what you guys plan to do is so awesome.
Yeah.
So how does he feel, or how do you guys feel, working together in that dynamic? And what I mean by that is some people say business partners, it's a bad thing to have, which I disagree because me and my business partner are like yin and yang, right? But
Mhm.
also I've seen husband and wife duos be amazing. And then I've
Mhm.
also seen it put, extra stress on the business. So how do you and your husband plan on dealing with that, always seeing each other?
So right now he works from home. So
Oh,
we
okay.
do always see each other. He's just upstairs, I'm downstairs. We are talking about, sorry, a little tickle my throat.
You're good.
We're talking about when he comes over full time, we might go get a co-working space with a small office just so we can really separate work and home. For me, I'm able to separate it because this is my office. When I'm done for the day, my computer turns off, my doors are shut. That's how I kind of leave the office. And he
Mhm.
does that to an extent as well. But when we're both in the company full time and it's occupying both of our minds a lot more often, we might need that degree of separation. When it comes to decisions, we've talked about this multiple times. He's going to make decisions on his area of expertise, right? I am not an engineer. I am not an architect. I know what I need from the business forefront. I'm going to give that to him. It's his job to translate that into tech jargon and hire the right people based off of the budgets that I provide. He's not going to make decisions based off of my side of the business. I know who I need to hire to keep moving my side forward, right? So we have these differing areas and we respect each other's expertise and experience, and so we'll get to come together. But at the end of the day, I'm the CEO, he's the CTO, and so we will make decisions accordingly. Now, with that said, I'm not the CEO of my household. He is the CEO of our household. And so it's a matter of making sure that when we're not in business, we are home, and I get to follow his lead in that area as well.
No, that's awesome. And I'm glad you guys are already talking about that. I think that's the biggest thing is like communication. And even with business partners, like me and my business partner have that same thing. It's like me and him, when we sit, like we'll sit in the office and it's like, right now we got business, right? We'll talk about business, however long it takes. And then after, like, okay, anything else? No, cool. And then all of a sudden goes back to, us being us.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to like almost like compartmentalize like those sides of you in that in a relationship so that it can work out. Otherwise they bleed into each other, and then it's like there's no separation, and there could be hostility, there could be resentment, all those kind of things. Now, something you mentioned that I think is so awesome, because actually I was talking on someone else's podcast about this. You said you have your office, right? And he has his area. Then you said when you're done, you leave, you close the doors, and it's done. Right? What does that mean for you? Because I know for me, it's like you almost like turn that side of my brain off to a degree. I know it never turns off, but like, it's now it's mom mode or now it's dad mode, right? So when was that a thing for you? And when did you realize that that was an important thing to actually have separation, especially when you work from home?
I think it probably really came to fruition around the time that I had my firstborn, because I needed to have that degree of separation. Before that, I was working 60, 70 hours a week, but I was also in beginning stages of my business, growing it, working all hours of the day. My husband was also working all hours of the day at that point too. So it kind of mirrored that a little bit. But once I had my son, I knew like I had what I wanted, which was to be a stay-at-home mom and an entrepreneur. And so I wanted to make sure that I honored the stay-at-home mom side and was present with my son. And so turning off the laptop, closing the doors, that's my James Clear Atomic Habits version of resetting the room and making sure that I'm prepared for the following day. So anything that's left over, there's always going to be more work I can get to at the next one.
Okay. So that's awesome though. I mean, it's huge. And I feel like people don't take that into real consideration. It's like even your bedroom, right? I was saying like even your bedroom is for resting. It's for obviously, the other stuff, but there's nothing, you shouldn't be working on your bed, and you need to separate those things. Like actually not until probably like 2 years ago, like we had a TV, actually the TV is still in there. I don't even know if it's plugged in, but like we don't watch TV or movies in the bedroom anymore. Right. It's like, that's the living room. That's family time. When you go into the bedroom, like now my brain has been able to shut off, where before I would literally lay in bed and just be staring at the ceiling. Like I'm bored. I can't fall asleep. And then when my brain knew that this was the rest room, and this is, I'm going to lay down, I'm going to knock out, like within minutes, I could just fall asleep. So it's crazy.
It's about classically conditioning yourself, That's why don't get me wrong. Some days I'll wear sweats, but I'm always in some type of at least branded t-shirt, right? That's my work shirt. So when I go out and do something family oriented, I'm not wearing a branded shirt. I wear other clothes. When I'm traveling for work, I wear branded or professional clothes. Like it's all about almost putting on that persona. And I know that Mills is a nickname, right?
Right.
But I also treat that as an alter ego. When I'm Mills, I'm the boss. I'm the CEO. When I'm Amelia, I'm mama. I'm wife. It's like setting the internal stage too, not just the physical one.
No, definitely. It's like Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba face, like it's
Exactly.
like you got to take the mask off. Well, let's go into, before we wrap things up, like with what you do as a fractional CFO, right? What is a fractional CFO, and how do they really take businesses to the next level? Because they honestly, that is, in my opinion, what they do.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, it's a societal norm for business owners to have a bookkeeper and an accountant. And oftentimes business owners feel like the bookkeeper or accountant are supposed to do the job that a CFO is actually supposed to do. But really a bookkeeper is there to categorize expenses, generate the financial reports, maybe go over them with you on a high level basis. An accountant's role is to take that data, plan out your taxes, file your taxes, right? But both of those roles are on a reactive basis, right? They're past tense. Where the business owners tend to struggle is taking that data and giving it a story. They don't necessarily understand how to read their profit and loss or their balance sheet or when to make that hiring decision. And frankly speaking, that's not the role of a bookkeeper or accountant. Some might be superstars and be able to answer both of those, but that's not their job description, right? That's a CFO's job description. And unless a business owner has a CFO, they should be their own CFO. And so here at MKB, what we realized is that a lot of business owners don't have somebody in that role because they either A, don't have 40 hours worth of work a week to justify hiring somebody full-time, or more commonly, they don't have at least $250,000 a year lying around to hire somebody full-time. And so what are they supposed to do? Especially if it's not their zone of genius, right? Just kind of figure it out. So we decided to create a fractional CFO service where we partner with our clients on a part-time contractual basis. We work for a fraction of the amount of hours and a fraction of the amount of cost, but not a fraction of the quality. Because at a small business owner size, you don't need that many hours to get the value. You need fewer hours to get the same amount of value.
No, I think that's so awesome. And honestly, I personally like the idea of a fractional CFO versus a full-time CFO. And my reasoning for that is because if you have someone that it is their zone of genius and they're doing things on, an hourly basis or whatever, they're not just, spending time just, here and there.
Yeah.
But that's a cool thing. My bigger thing is that finances, in my opinion, are not emotional. They are numbers. But if someone's full-time job or career is tied to the financials, they could be making emotional decisions for the company based on numbers. But if you bring someone that's fractional on, they're looking at your numbers, someone else's numbers, there is no emotion that is tied to your numbers. So whether you like their answer or not, they're going to give you the raw, real answer. So I think personally, a fractional CFO is a way to go than a full-time CFO if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. And we were talking about this at the meetup in Utah earlier this week, where a lot of the business owners, they don't know if they're hiring the right roles internally. Like they don't know if the person they've hired has the experience or the skill set to be that internal bookkeeper or controller, right? Because it's not their zone of genius. But when you hire somebody where that's all they do, they've made their business out of it, that that's their area of expertise. You don't have to question that side of it. And it makes the decision-making from the business owner side a lot easier.
No, definitely. And that is 100% true. Well, before we wrap up, I got one question for you, right?
Sure.
And I didn't tell you this ahead of time because I like the first thing that comes to mind. It's more authentic, right? Mill's legacy wall, right? Now, I will say this is not a tombstone, right? Some people get a tombstone answer. This is a legacy wall with, it says Mills Bender and it has your one message, right? It could be as long or as short as you want, but your one message for the up and coming generations that you learned along your journey. What would that message be?
Be afraid, but do it anyway.
Okay, explain a little bit.
I think that there's a misconception that business owners have no fear, and that's why they create their business. I have fear all the time. I just use it as adrenaline, and I just do it anyway. I have this how hard can it be mentality, and so it's, even if I get afraid along the way, let's try it. How hard can it actually be? We can figure it out. Nothing is unfixable, right? That's kind of my whole internal mantra.
That's awesome. And I do agree with that 100%. Believe me, being an entrepreneur is scary daily, and same thing. If someone else has done it, you could do it, right? There's always a solution to every problem. You just got to find it. Where can people connect with you, and tune into your podcast, Mill Knows Bills, right?
Access to everything is on our website, millsknowsbills.com. You can get the podcast there, YouTube channel there, all of our social links, book a call, all of it's there.
Perfect. Well, that will be in the show notes, guys. Make sure you guys give Mills a follow. She honestly puts up a ton of content about finances. And if you are struggling whatsoever, reach out to her and her team. But guys, like always, we appreciate you. We love you. And we will see you guys on the next one. Mills, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset causes shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to